All rise for the jury. You may be seated.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I think I did forget to tell you yesterday, with respect to the attorneys and witnesses on this case, when they're asking questions, I give them the option of having a mask on or not. So it's their choice. Some of the witnesses will take off their masks, some of them won't. Just so you understand why that's happening. All right, we're going to continue on with the state calling the next witness.
The state calls John Miller.
Mr. Miller, if you can come right up to the exterior, I'll swear you in. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Can you have a seat in the witness stand?
Pull yourself up. You don't have to be really close.
Okay.
Only one person talks at a time. She takes everything down, and then you heard the judge. You can take that off if you'd like.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller, could you state your name and spell your last name for the record, please?
John Joseph Miller, M-I-L-L-E-R,
And how old are you, John?
58.
And you're 58 years old today. Do you have any criminal convictions in your past?
Yes, I do. About
Do you-
13 of them.
Okay. And I'm going to be talking to you today about what happened in August of 2020. So can you tell me, in August of 2020, where were you living?
In Toma, Wisconsin.
And whereabout is that in the state of Wisconsin?
It's up north by La Crosse. It's like 40 miles from La Crosse,
Okay.
which is a popular town. So.
Okay. And do you have a hobby of working on or repairing vehicles?
Yes, I do.
How did you first come to meet a man named James Gruettner and his wife Julie Gruettner?
My girlfriend at the time, they were our friends. And she wanted me to meet him. And she took me over there. We left early in the morning. And she took me over there to meet him. And very nice people. And Jim and I bonded very quickly.
Okay.
Because he was a recovering alcoholic, as I am. And we just bonded. We talked and talked and talked. And
Okay. So when you said your girlfriend took you over to meet them, where did she take you?
to Wind Lake, Wisconsin.
And where is that in the state of Wisconsin?
It'd be Racine County, I believe.
Okay, so southern Wisconsin?
Yes.
Okay. And what date, if you recall, did you go to Wind Lake to meet James and Julie?
What?
What day or what date?
Oh, August. It would have been the morning of August 4th.
Okay. So August 4th, 2020 was the first date you had met James and Julie Gruettner?
Yes.
And if you wouldn't mind just speaking into the microphone a little bit more, just to make sure the jury can all hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Turn up the mic so that may help.
Thank you. When you met James and Julie that day, did they ask you for assistance in repairing a vehicle?
They said their daughter's vehicle needed to be fixed, and they didn't ask me for help at all. I volunteered to do it.
And you had just met them that day. Had you ever met their daughter that day?
No.
Or that morning, I should say?
No, not at all. I mean, I knew they had four kids, I believe.
Okay. And you agreed to do that just as a favor?
Yeah.
What did you know about where James and Julie's daughter lived?
I didn't know where they lived at the time. I didn't even know what city I was in when it all happened, when everything happened. I had no clue.
Sure.
Then I discovered it was Oshkosh. I mean, I help people, that's what I do.
How did you end up getting from Wind Lake in southern Wisconsin to James's daughter's house?
Gym girls,
And do you know about how long that took to get there?
about an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Now, at some point on the afternoon of August 4th, 2020, did you receive a call from a man you didn't know?
Yes, I did.
And what was the nature of that call?
He wanted to know my certification on the call, on working on vehicles, and my certification number, and all the, stuff like that.
And did he say who he was?
He said his name was Josh, yes.
Did you have any idea who he was in relation to the auto repair that you were going to do?
Yes, I did.
And who did you understand him to be?
Rebecca's ex-boyfriend.
As part of this case, did you provide your cell phone to officers of the Oshkosh Police Department so that they could download its contents?
Yes, I did.
And did you do that voluntarily?
Yes.
I've handed you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 37. Does that appear to be a call log from your cell phone?
Yes.
Now, Your Honor, I would ask to move, I would move to admit the State's Exhibit 37 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, sir.
After receiving exhibit 37.
If you could just turn to the second page, and I'm going to direct you to the call labeled number 4, calling from a number ending in 6331. Does that appear to be the call you received from an individual identifying themselves as Josh?
Yes, it does.
And does that call indicate, or does that log indicate the time the call came in?
Yes, it does.
And what time is that?
2:26.
So the, I think you're looking at the duration.
Oh, I'm sorry, I am.
So if you go under the time.
14:41.
Thank you. So 14:41 military time, I guess would be 2:41? Is that
Yes,
accurate?
ma'am.
So that call came in at 2:41, and the duration there?
2 minutes and 26 seconds.
Okay. And what else did this individual say to you aside from asking your qualifications or certification numbers?
Said something to the effect of, I suggest you don't go fix the truck.
And what was the tone of the voice of this person?
Angry.
And how did the call end?
I hung up because I was really irritated basically with the call, with asking me for my license number and all that, and I go for it. I just get irritated with stuff like that, and so on.
Okay. And did you really think anything of it, or that anything was going to happen from that?
Absolutely not.
Where were you when you received that call?
I believe I was at Jim and Julie's kitchen table.
In Wind Lake, Wisconsin?
Pardon me?
In Wind Lake?
Yes, ma'am.
Subsequent to receiving that call, did you then travel to Oshkosh with James?
Not right away, probably within half hour, 40 minutes maybe.
Okay. And I think you already testified James drove you there, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately what time you arrived at Rebecca's house?
It probably would have been about 5. Matter of fact, I know it was right around 5 because Jim had asked me how long it would take, and I said about 3 hours, and I got done with it at 8:22.
And when you got there, that was the first time you'd met Rebecca?
Yes.
And had you, at any point that morning, ever spoken with Rebecca?
No. Not that I recall, anyway.
Can you describe what happened from the time that you arrived at Rebecca's house?
Me and Jim were talking about the truck, and we were waiting for Rebecca to get there with the radiator, and she brought 2, so we figured out which the right one was. And I started showing the garage and started taking out the other radiator and putting the radiator, the new one in, and cleaned up all the tools, got done with it, and filled up the antifreeze and all that, and I still had to do fill up the transmission yet and all that. And I asked Jim what time it was. He said it was 8:22. I said, I told you it'd take about 3 hours. And I started cleaning up all the tools, getting everything all cleaned up. And I seen Rebecca was on the passenger side wheel well, and I was at the front end, and I seen her eyeballs light up.
And is this, when you're talking about the passenger side and the front end, are you talking about the Tahoe?
Yes, ma'am.
And where was that Tahoe parked?
In Rebecca's garage.
Okay, go on.
And I seen Rebecca's eyeballs light up, and I turned around, and Josh was standing there. And I said to him, I said, "Are you Josh?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Truck's about buttoned up, sir." And I turned back around, and I heard Rebecca say, "Josh." I heard pop, pop. I turned, and there was a red thing staring at me, and I just went down like that and got shot in the face.
And the man that you saw come up the driveway and that shot you in the face, do you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes, I did.
Can you identify him by what he's wearing?
And he's wearing a gray suit, blue shirt, and a straight tie.
The individual to my left?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would ask that the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant.
Good job.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 27. And Your Honor, that exhibit has already been moved into evidence. I would just ask to publish it while we go through it. Does that appear to be as the placement of the vehicles would have been immediately prior to the defendant's arrival?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you, well, I'm going to grab a mic for you so that you can stand up and point on the screen where each person was, and if you could hold the mic while we talk about that.
Sorry, right behind you, charging. Black
Turn it
box.
up.
There you go. Thank you.
Now, if you could just point for the jurors first, where were you and Rebecca standing immediately prior to the defendant's arrival?
I would have been right here, and Rebecca would have been right here by this wheel well.
Okay, so Rebecca was slightly inside the garage and you were more in front of the Tahoe?
The Tahoe was just beyond the door, so I would have been right in the door line.
Okay,
Yes, I was.
okay. And where did the defendant go when he walked up?
He walked up from this way here, came through here, and when I turned around, he was here. And then when I heard him say, "Hey, babe," he came over, he started walking that way, and I turned around and finished to make sure nothing else was left in the engine, nothing, make sure everything was right.
So when we're looking at that picture there, it would have been Rebecca on the left next to the Tahoe. The defendant then was kind of in the middle of you two, and you would have been more off to the right?
Yes.
Okay. How far was the defendant from you, if you're able to estimate, when you turned back around after hearing the pop pop noise?
3 to 4 feet.
And you can have a seat again for a minute, and we'll get back to some exhibits in a minute. So when you saw the weapon pointed at you, you indicated, well, can you just repeat what happened then?
I seen that red dot thing come at my, right, put my nose here, and I just dove down and tried to get away.
Did you begin running right away?
Yeah.
I've shown you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 38. Is that a rendering of the scene where you drew your path of travel immediately after the incident when you were working with police officers?
Yes.
All right, move State's Exhibit 38 into evidence and
Any objection? No. Accept and receive the exhibit.
So I'm sorry, if you could just stand up again, just so we can point out the letters that you have there and the path of travel.
Turn that on.
So the R there, is that an R? If we look next to the Tahoe, there's a marking there.
Oh, right here.
And would that be Rebecca?
That's Rebecca, yes.
Okay. And then there's a J there.
Yes.
Would that be you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the X, what does that stand for?
The X is right about where Josh was.
And do you have any recollection of where James was at that point?
James was between the passenger door and the rear end passenger side door, and that's where he got gunned down at,
Can you just point to where that would be on that drawing?
right here.
He was right about there?
Yeah.
Okay. So, can you just use your finger to show the jury that path of travel from where you were to where you went?
I came, after I seen the red, I just flew and I came right around this here way through here, trying to find help.
Okay. And you can have a seat again. I'm going to show you some more exhibits. And these will be marked State's Exhibits 39 through 42. Do those pictures appear to depict some of the yard area that you would have run through?
Yes, yes, they do.
I would move to admit State's Exhibits 39 through 42 into evidence and publish that to the jury as we go through it.
Any objection?
No, sir.
Second to receive the exhibits.
What we're looking at here is that Rebecca's house on the right and then the house directly to the south of her.
Yes.
Okay. And State's Exhibit 40. Can you tell the jury what that is there?
That's the spot where I was running so fast that I slammed right into it, and my shoe came off, rather, somewhere by that air conditioner heating unit it is.
Okay, if we can move to 41. And is that your shoe there? It's a little difficult to see in the exhibit, but
Yes, it is.
okay, and moving to the next one. And is that house on the very left there, is that the house that you ultimately ran to?
This second one, yes.
The one furthest to the left of the picture? That one, yes. Thank you. And what did you do when you came to that house?
They wouldn't open the door, and I ripped the screen door open to get in, to get help.
And what did you say, or who did you encounter when you came inside?
A guy that was watching TV.
And did you have any conversation with him?
Yeah, I said, can you please call, I was just trying to get it out, like I said, I was shot, and I was trying to get it out, please call 911, call the police, call an ambulance service, call somebody, please, and all he kept telling me was get out of his house. You know, I said, I'm not leaving until you call help, get help. And I went, he finally did call, and then I went down by his door, and I seen a red truck that was parked on the end of Rebecca's driveway. Not in the driveway, but right on the end there. And I seen it leave. And I went back to the scene to tell them I got help on the way. I knew Jim was gone. I've seen deceased people before, I know when a person's like this. Rebecca was mourning really bad. I told her help's on the way. Sorry.
And I'll give you just a minute. You indicated Rebecca was moaning. Did you have any actual conversation with Rebecca?
No, she was mourning too. I don't think she was coherent.
Excuse me, you said you didn't think she was coherent?
No, she was just moaning. Positive she was moaning from the pain.
And apart from saying, I've got help on the way, did you say anything else to either James or Rebecca?
I said I called 911, I got the ambulance services, and I got help on the way.
Now, going back to the actual shooting, how long would you estimate it was from the time when you first turned and saw the defendant to when you heard the pop-pop noise?
It all happened in less than a second.
And what was the amount of time that passed between hearing the pop-pop sound behind you related to Rebecca and you being shot?
Like I said, it was all less than a second.
At any point that night, did you, Rebecca, or James threaten Joshua Aide in any way?
If you want to call me telling him that if you don't want to see me fix the truck, then don't come. If you want to call that a threat, then yes, I made a threat then.
So, are you just testifying the only thing you said to him was, if you don't want to see me fix the truck, don't come?
Right.
But fair to say you never threatened his safety?
No, ma'am.
And was that comment you're referring to by phone?
Yes.
When he arrived at the house, aside from saying your truck is finished, sir, did you really say anything to him?
No, ma'am.
At any point that night, did you, Rebecca, or James have a weapon?
No.
Did you provide the same version of events to officers that arrived on scene?
Yes, I did.
Were you accompanied by police officers to the hospital immediately upon them making contact with you?
Yes.
I'd like to play for you a portion of body camera from when you had contact with officers so that the jury can observe your demeanor that night. This is going to be within the thumb drive file Exhibit 7, and this will be 7E, the body 1. And if I could just ask the court to turn the lights down so that you can see that a little better. This will be 2 minutes, 55 seconds to 3 minutes, 55 seconds.
He's shot? Okay. Hey, let's get you back here. Let's get you back here. Get back here. Get back here. Come on. Yep, follow me. Follow me. Come here. Come here. You got up here. Get up here. Where are you shot at? In the face. Got a gunshot to the face. Come back over my squad. Yep, they're over there. Yeah, he shot in the face. Hey, come here, sir. Sir, come here. No, over here, over here, over here. Sit on the curb.
Oh, God, please don't
Yep.
kids in the house.
Yep. Hey, just hold on a second. What kind of gun were you shot with?
I don't know.
What? Yeah, I'm good, I'm
I was
good.
working on a truck.
Yep,
Next
okay.
thing I know, the guy comes and pulls out a gun, he shot the girl, and shot me, and shot the other guy.
Where's he at?
He took off in a car.
He took off in a car. What kind of car?
I don't know, right car, I don't know, and was shot.
The guy that shot him took off in a...
And now I'm going to move on to 5 minutes 14 seconds to 5 minutes 37 seconds.
Alright. Are you still breathing?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Still good?
Not bad.
Okay. I can't really tell. You're walking and talking, which is good right now. Let's have you sit right here. Sit on the grass right here.
I'm afraid to be alone. What if he comes back with a gun?
Nope, he's fine. Sit down, sit down. Sit down.
I'm afraid, man.
And moving on to 6:31 to 6:42.
Probably brought him way over here. Yeah, so they're dealing with that over there.
I'm not worried about that.
Okay, it's hospital gentlemen.
I don't even know where I'm at. I just came to work on a vehicle.
Okay, you're in Oshkosh right now. We're gonna,
And 11:30 to 13:20.
Here's his license, you guys know that.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for
I'm gonna go. Are you guys okay if I talk to him quick? No, you guys just. John, who is the person that came and did this?
All I know is his name is John.
Josh, that's all you know.
Yeah, it was that way. It was her ex-boyfriend I got.
Lady's ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, I didn't know her or him. I was just asking.
Who's the lady? What's her name?
All I know her name is Becky.
Becky.
Yeah, I never.
Is she the one that shot or had injury? Was there two females? Or was it a female and male?
I'm a female. Me, a male, and another female.
So the female, okay, who's the other male?
Jim.
Jim what?
I don't know his last
You
name.
don't know his last name? Okay. What were you over there doing?
Working, changing a radiator.
3-5, all this clear. It is clear. 5 Oshkosh Fire Department.
So you were changing a radiator, so you were working on whose car? Hers. So you were working on Becky's car. Were you under the car, in the car?
I just got done and I turned around. And I looked at him and he went toward her and he pulled out the gun and shot her.
You're clear.
And then turned around and shot me.
Okay, so you get finished changing the radiator, you turn around, and what do you hear, see?
I turned around and the guy, he was standing there and he looked at her and went towards her and I was doing something and the next thing I know her pop and then he turned around and shot me.
Okay.
And
Hang on,
right where he hit the ground.
I'm gonna get my phone to snap some pictures quick, okay?
And then I'd like to play a portion of another body cam. This will be 7F to body 3, 1248 to 1427.
From the front of it?
No, when he first gets there, I'm right at the front of the vehicle. My back is to him.
Okay.
But I see Becky look up, and then I just turned and looked. And I said, "Oh, you died?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, the vehicle's done, sir." And then he walked to Becky and said, "Hey, babe," and that's when I heard about it.
Do you know of any problems between those two, or Jim ever told you, or?
All I know is they work together.
Okay. Who told you that?
The parents, the mom, and the dad, I think.
Trying to think if there's anything else. Was there ever a mention that, like, he was gonna come and hurt somebody today? Did he threaten anybody specifically, say, I'm just coming with a gun, or I'm gonna
No.
kill somebody, or?
No, nobody would have went. If anybody thought anything like that, nobody would have went.
Okay, so he told you on the phone that you probably shouldn't go there, right?
Yeah,
Okay. But that's all he said?
yeah.
Okay.
And that's just, I think that's
I
not,
understand that.
the lady needed a truck fix. And,
Yep, you were just trying to help somebody else.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't doing it to make any money or nothing. I was just doing it for free.
Right.
And then trying to help somebody out. You know, I just met them, they were nice people, they had me over their house. We were gonna be staying there for a week. I mean, they were feeding us. I mean,
At Jim's house, or?
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
So that was all video from what you reported immediately after the incident, both on the scene, in the ambulance, and at the hospital that night?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's consistent with what you're testifying to today?
Yes.
I've handed you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 43. Does that appear to be a portion of your certified medical records from August 4th, 2020?
Yeah, yes it does.
Can you just flip to that tabbed page and read the highlighted portion there?
Procedure CT, antidote, head and neck. Result date 8/4/2020. Findings compatible with gunshot wound to the face with likely entrance in the region of the right mandible and exit through the left cheek. Commuted and displaced fractures through the angle of the right mandible and exit through the left cheek. Tiny cortical defected within the interior wall of the left maxillary sinus may reflect small, essential, non-displaced fracture, extensive soft tissue swelling substance, air, and tiny metallic foreign bodies are seen within the fracture. Extensive soft tissue swelling, subsequent air, and tiny metallic foreign, greater than left face.
So, when the bullet entered, did it enter the right side of your face
Yes,
and exited the left side?
yes.
And that's a lot of medical jargon there. Can you just tell the jury what the injuries to your mouth and face were?
It went in here, it came out here, it went into here, came out here, and took out all my teeth and everything. In the meantime, I got I'll never be able to taste or anything again, and it's tore up my tongue. I've got to have a big bone put in my face to get teeth again, and that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Your Honor, I would just ask to move State's Exhibit 43 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
Accept to receive the exhibit.
Can I show you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 44 through 46? John, are those pictures of your injuries taken at the hospital immediately after the incident?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
I would move State's Exhibits 44 through 46 into evidence and ask to publish them electronically to the jury.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Accept to receive the exhibit and you may publish.
So that there, Exhibit 44, is that just a frontal view of your face after the shooting?
Yes, yes it is.
And moving on to 45, is that a picture of the entry wound of the bullet?
Yes it is.
Okay. And 46, is that the exit wound?
Yes, yes ma'am.
Did you answer all of the questions officers had for you that night?
Yes, I did, to the best of my knowledge.
And since that night, have you remained cooperative with this investigation?
Yes, I have.
And you already testified that you consented to a download of your phone as part of the investigation?
Yes,
Did you also consent to providing a DNA sample so that all blood evidence could be tested?
yes, I did.
No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Miller, do you have exhibit number 38 in front of you? It would be the photograph where you drew your path of travel.
Yes, yes, I do.
And can we have that back up on the screen, please? Do you? Now, sir, initially when you testified about what had occurred when you were shot, you testified that as you ran around the white car, you were shot in between the car and the house as you fled towards the neighbors, correct?
Yes,
And now we just listened and watched the body cam of you in the hospital when you told the officer that you were standing right in front of the Tahoe when you were shot by Josh after he shot Jim, correct?
yes,
So you acknowledged telling the police that you were essentially, while in the hospital, where the J is marked in front of the Tahoe, is where you were shot, but you testified here this morning first that It was, you were shot when you ran around the car and were between the house and the car.
No, I was, when I turned, I heard pop, pop. When I turned, I seen the infrared. I was right at, between the car and the Tahoe. And I ducked to my left.
Where the J is now is where you were shot, correct? As you told the police in the hospital.
Right. Right.
And not on the path.
No.
Now, at the start of your testimony, you testified that you had, quote, about, end quote, 13 convictions. You have actually 13 convictions, correct?
Yes.
And you testified that you had just met Jim on the morning, and Julie on the morning of August 4th, 2020, for the first time, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that you bonded immediately, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you immediately became friends.
Yes.
And when you had gotten down there, they mentioned to you that they were going to go to Oshkosh or something along those lines and work on Rebecca's car, correct?
No, they said that her daughter needed the truck fixed, and I volunteered my services to do it. Because I work on vehicles, and Jim didn't know how to do it.
Now, I'm showing you what's been previously marked as defense exhibit number 13. And that is you in the video at the hospital, correct?
Yes.
And I'm going to play defense exhibit 13, beginning at 1 minute 9 seconds.
And you didn't know the guy?
No, I didn't know anybody there. I just met these people.
Whose car were you working on?
I was working on Becky's car. Okay, Becky is Jim's daughter. She was DOA.
Jim is the dad of... Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just met these people yesterday. My girlfriend here.
Now, that was stopping at 1 minute 30 seconds. That was taken on August 4th after the shooting, correct?
Yes, sir.
In fact, you told the police officer that you had just met these people yesterday, correct?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did.
So it wasn't the morning of August 4th that you had met them?
I got confused. It was the morning of August 4th.
And continuing at 1 minute 30 seconds.
Jim and his wife. Okay. And then today, all of a sudden, they needed a car fixed in Oshkosh, so we went from Italy to Oshkosh, and I fixed it for them.
You're from Greenland?
Pausing at 1 minute 45 seconds. And then you told the officer that all of a sudden they needed that car fixed that day, correct?
Yes. They needed the car fixed. She needed it out of her garage.
Now I'm going to refer you back to State's Exhibit number 37, the phone extraction that was taken from your phone. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes. Yes, I did.
And I'm gonna ask you to turn to page 3. And you'll note on item number 13 that you in fact placed a phone call to Julie Gruettner on August 3rd at 8:14 p.m., correct?
Yes, I did.
And you had Julie Gruettner logged into your contacts because her name comes up as the outgoing call, correct?
Yes.
And you placed another call to Julie Gruettner on August 3rd, 2020 at 9:21 p.m., correct? Item number 10.
Oh, yes, I did.
And again, Julie Gruettner is in the contacts of your phone, correct?
Yes.
And when you had this phone conversation with Josh, you testified that the only thing that you said to Josh was, if you don't want to see me fix the truck, don't come, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you had gotten upset and hung up on him, correct?
I got irritated.
And in fact, you had told Josh, when he asked if he had a license, quote, I don't have no fucking license, been doing this shit for 30 years, end quote, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you were, is it fair to say, quote, royally pissed off, end quote, at Josh?
No, I was irritated.
Now, you testified that when Josh had approached the Tahoe, Rebecca was off onto the passenger side of it by the wheel well, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you were the only one standing directly in front of the Tahoe?
Yes.
And after you were shot, you ran to the neighbor's house, correct, about 2 doors down?
Yes, sir.
And you asked him to call 911, correct?
Yes.
And then you returned to the scene to check on Jim and Rebecca, correct?
And let them know that I called for help. Help was
Say
on the way.
that one more time.
Oh, let them know I called for help and help was on the way.
And you stayed with them until you heard the police coming?
Absolutely not. I went out to the street, got on my knees, held my jaw up with one hand and held my hand in the air. Because I already heard sirens coming, and when there's a shooting, I know what happens.
So you ran out to the street and you got on your knees
Yes, sir.
and you put your hands in the air.
Yes, sir, I did.
And then when the police came, you went to meet them.
No, I was already kneeled. They told me I could get up.
And I moved defense exhibit number 13 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
Since we received exhibit 13.
I'm showing you what's been marked as defense exhibit number 15. We may have it on the screen, please. And beginning play at 1 minute 18 seconds.
Negative, the male said that he was not involved, that's all I knew, disconnected with us. Alright.
Same.
What? Pausing at 1 minute 45 seconds. Did you see that, sir?
Yes, sir.
In fact, is that not you running across the street when the officers approach?
Yes, it is.
Where were you coming from the other side of the street?
I was in the road, like I said, on my knees, holding my hand, my jaw up on this side, and my hand in the air.
We agree the video just shows you running across the street, correct?
When I seen them coming, yes.
And in fact, isn't that true that you once hit something across the street?
Absolutely not.
And after you went back by Rebecca from Mr. Schrader's house, you collected her Smith & Wesson 380 pistol?
No.
In fact, you took that across the street, correct?
No.
And you had armed yourself with a knife prior to going to Rebecca's house that afternoon, correct?
No.
Is your testimony that you did not have a knife on your person that day?
I may have had a box cutter knife on me I usually carry. I may have had that.
So you did have a knife on you?
I honestly couldn't say.
Now, were you supposed to be compensated at all for your assistance on August 4th?
Absolutely not.
And were you not informed that Josh had a significant life insurance policy with Rebecca as the beneficiary?
Nothing, don't have a clue of anything about that.
And you in fact were given Jim's car after this, correct?
Yes, I was.
And it was Julie that gave you this car?
Yes, sir.
And is it still your testimony that you just first met Julie on August 4th?
Yes, sir.
No further questions, thank you.
Any redirect?
Just briefly, can you just describe for the jury the relationship between Julie and your girlfriend Carla?
Geez, they were best friends for 35 years.
Julie's been Carla's best friend for 35 years.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, these two calls that Mr. Seaman pointed you to in State's Exhibit 37, from the night before the incident, there's the call number 13, shows a duration of 24 seconds.
Yes. Yes.
And there's call number 10 showing a duration of 3 minutes, 25 seconds.
Yes.
Do you recall what was said during that call?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I talked to Julie. If you go with my phone records, I talked to Julie on numerous occasions.
Okay. And where, in the, I guess, months and years prior to August 4th, where were Julie and James living?
Las Vegas, Nevada, because we had planned to go out there for a term.
And then they moved back shortly before this?
Pardon me?
They moved back to Wisconsin shortly before this incident?
Yeah, I believe it was only 9 days.
And So you'd never met Julie or James in person?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So your contact was based on your girlfriend's close relationship with Julie?
Yes.
And fair to say that you never talked to James, Julie, or Rebecca about any life insurance with anyone?
No, ma'am. I've never talked to anybody about any kind of life insurance, even on myself.
No further questions.
May you recross?
Just one question. You just testified that you've talked to Julie on numerous occasions, correct?
Yes, sir.
However, you told the police, and we just saw it on Defense Exhibit 13, that when asked at the hospital, you told them that you did not know any of these people, correct?
I personally did not know any of these people.
No further questions.
Anything?
Nothing further.
Next step down.
Thank you.
State, call the next witness.
State Falls Officer Cody Rukamp.
Officer, if you can come right up here, I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Can I have a seat in the witness stand?
Real close, pretty close to the mic to pick it up. Only one person talks at a time. She takes everything down. You may take your mask off if you want to testify if you're comfortable. Okay.
Officer, can you state your name and spell your last name for the record, please?
It's Cody Rukamp, R-U-K-A-M-P,
And how are you employed?
through the City of Oshkosh Police Department as a patrol officer.
How long have you been employed in that capacity?
It's been approximately 4.5 years.
I'd like to direct your attention to the events of August 4th, 2020. On that date, did you respond to a shooting at 1715 Minnesota Street in the city of Oshkosh?
I did,
Is that in Winnebago County, Wisconsin?
yes.
Were you the first officer to make contact with a female gunshot victim?
I was.
Do you know who that woman was?
Rebecca,
Can you describe Rebecca's condition when you made contact with her?
initially she was slumped over as if she was unresponsive or unconscious. When I approached her, she kind of lifted her head up to me. She was covered in blood from the top of her head down to her middle chest area.
Was she able to give you any information on the nature of her injuries?
She believed that she was shot, but she really wasn't sure exactly what had occurred.
When you arrived there, did officers know where the shooter was?
We did not.
When you arrived there, were there concerns that the shooter may be still in the area or near the victims?
Yes, there was.
What was your primary role in your contact with Rebecca?
My primary role was to get her medical attention because at the time we weren't really sure the extent of her injuries. So my primary, goal was to get her medical attention.
Where exactly was she located when you first made contact with her?
She was behind the residence in a garage, and she was kind of tucked back in the southeast corner of the garage.
When you made contact with her, did you observe any weapons near her in the garage?
I did not.
Did you observe her holding any weapons?
She was not holding any weapons.
Were you with Rebecca the entire time from, well, let me back up and ask you another question. What happened next after you made contact with her?
So after the initial contact and observing the blood, I attempted to kind of locate the source of the blood. I was very difficult with how much blood there was and the condition that she was in. So at that point, my goal was to get her out of the area because we didn't know where the shooter was. She wasn't able to fully walk on her own, so I had to kind of assist her, and then once we got to the end of the driveway, we had to actually kind of carry her along to the next block over to where the ambulance was.
And while you were waiting for the ambulance, were you able to lift up her sweatshirt, feel around there to see if there was any weapon concealed there?
Yeah, I had started to look to see if there was any sort of injuries towards the upper back area. I also utilized that time to search her waistband and her clothing for any weapons.
And did you find any weapons?
I did not.
Were you with Rebecca the entire time from when she left the garage until she got into the ambulance?
I was.
At any time did you see her toss the weapon or have a weapon?
She did not do any of that.
Were there EMTs in the ambulance attending to Rebecca the entire time she was in there?
Correct. There were several firefighter paramedics in there.
Based on your experience, if an EMT were to find a firearm on an individual in their ambulance, would you be made aware of that?
Yes, we would.
Were you made aware of any weapon found on Rebecca?
I was not.
Did you ride with Rebecca to the hospital?
I did.
Do you utilize body cam as part of your duties?
Yes, I do.
I'd like to play you a portion of your body cam. I think this has already been admitted into evidence. This is on the thumb drive, Exhibit 7, labeled 7C. And this is Rukamp 1. I'll be playing at 14:39 to 14:45.
R-E-B-E-C-C-A, middle initial, yeah, last name.
Now, in that body cam there, does that depict the EMTs cutting her sweatshirt off her body?
Correct.
Okay, now moving on to 17:32 to 17:40.
Okay. B-U-R-C-O-W-S-K-I, what's your birthday?
Does that appear there that they're also cutting her pants?
Yes, they are.
And are you aware of any weapons being located in her clothing when it was cut off of her?
There were not any weapons located.
Did you take possession of all of her clothing at the hospital?
Yeah, between the ambulance and the hospital, I had taken every piece of clothing that she had on her.
Were you able to discover which items were in her pockets, any pockets in her clothing?
Yeah, she had a couple items in the pants pockets. There was some sort of, I believe there was a lighter, and there was some sort of like metal, like socket type thing in her pants pocket.
No firearms though?
Correct, no firearms.
Was Rebecca willing to answer all of your questions to the extent that she was able the entire time you had contact with her?
She was.
No further questions.
Ross. Thank you, Your Honor. Officer, you wrote 2 reports in this case, correct?
Correct.
Do you need a copy of his report? Insert, yeah.
Now, I've provided you what's been marked as defense exhibits number 22 and 23. Can you identify what exhibit number 22 is?
Exhibit 22 would be my initial supplement report.
And can you identify what exhibit number 23 is?
That is an additional supplement report.
And were both these reports written by you?
Yes,
And did they appear to accurately, the exhibits reflect the initial report and the supplement report identified as number 22 and 23 defense respectively?
can you ask that question again?
Do exhibits number 22 and 23 accurately reflect the police reports that you had written in this case?
Correct.
Now, in your first report, I will note on page 1 of 4, the second paragraph, you initially reported that when you made contact with Rebecca, quote, the female responded to verbal commands and stated that she felt sick and thought she was shot, correct?
Yes,
And in your second report, exhibit number 23, you wrote when you first encountered her, meaning Rebecca, she was unconscious and unresponsive to verbal commands, correct?
correct.
And in the first report, the only thing you had mentioned searching for or looking for, and again, it'd be that second paragraph on page 1 of 4, was on Rebecca was looking for any type of gunshot wound, correct?
For, I guess, for injury related, correct.
But in the second report, exhibit number 23, you talk about searching the area. You report now that you searched the area around Rebecca for weapons and evidence and things that could have been ditched, correct?
Correct, that was based on reviewing some body camera footage.
And the first report was is dated August 5th, correct?
Correct,
And the second report is dated December 19th, correct?
correct.
Now, in between the writing of your first report and the second report, you had learned that Rebecca's .380 Smith & Wesson pistol had been recovered, correct?
I was not aware of that until recently.
So who asked you to write the second report to talk about areas searched around Rebecca?
I was only asked to review my body camera footage and just make sure that everything was accurately depicted in my report.
So who asked you to write report identified as exhibit number 23?
Like I said, I was just asked to review my body camera footage. I don't know exactly who specifically had asked me to do that. They just wanted to make sure that we had everything thoroughly documented.
And so you reviewed your body cam footage, correct?
Correct.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as defense exhibit number 24. I just need a second here, please.
Let me know when you're ready.
Thank you, Judge. I just need a moment. And if I may publish now, Your Honor, Officer, I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as defense exhibit number 24. And we'll begin playing at 58 seconds.
Somebody. Okay, watch.
And pausing at 1 minute, 5 seconds. Now, I know we just saw a little portion, but does this appear to be your body camera?
Correct.
And we know that there was a number of wrenches and metal objects lying on the ground in front of the Tahoe, correct?
There was tools laying around the vehicle, correct.
And continuing from 1 minute, 5 seconds.
436, we have one male in the back driveway. We have one female inside the garage. Is there anyone? On the side door here. Where, you know what? Is this for, are you injured? Where are you injured?
Now pausing at 1 minute, 31 seconds. Now, had you heard other officers communicating with Rebecca as you approached the garage?
Yeah, so initially, when I was walking up the driveway, I did hear another officer speaking with a female. I didn't know if that was specifically this female or not, but there was communication with an adult female.
And you heard the female responding with the other officer, correct?
Correct.
So she was not unconscious, even as the officer before you had approached the garage, correct?
When I made contact with her at this point, the way that she appeared to me was unresponsive, unconscious, almost like going in and out of consciousness. So that's where I guess my wording might be a little bit not correct, but she was not initially responding to me.
Now, we saw in the video that it was a cluttered area around Rebecca, correct? Would that be fair description?
Yes.
There's a lot of clutter. I mean, is there any other way to describe the area around Rebecca?
There's tools and other items from our garage.
And we saw your flashlight, you kind of circled that around her, correct?
Checking her immediate area, correct.
You didn't pick anything up or actually physically search any of the area around Rebecca, correct?
Correct.
And continuing at 1 minute, 31 seconds.
Okay, can you get up? Can you get up? Can you stand? You can't stand?
I've got, mine should be on the ground right here.
Can you stand? Come on, can you stand?
No.
Do you know who did this?
Yeah.
Is he in the house?
I don't know.
Who is it?
His name's Josh.
Josh, what's his last name?
Aide.
What's his last name?
Aide.
A-I-D?
Yes, Aide.
436, that's why it's going to be a Joshua Aide, A-I-D-E.
He's got a red. Toyota 411. That's my dad.
Is that what he was in here on? I have not yet. Let me.
Take the pulse. I'm taking pulse on this guy. There's a guy right here, take the pulse. You get it? Oh my dad.
436, suspect's vehicle is going to be a red Toyota 400.
You got one down right here for you. Oh, that ear is fucking weird.
All right, you can't walk at all? If I can get you out of here, that'd be best.
Yeah, I think it's wrong.
You want me to stand up? We're going to go this way. Okay? Do you have any pain other than your right?
And pausing at 327. Now, at that point, you would walk Rebecca out of the garage, correct?
Correct.
And the video doesn't show anywhere you conducted any other search of her person or the area around her after taking her out of the garage, correct?
Correct.
In your report, though, you wrote that you would look for weapons or evidence that could have been ditched or placed near her before taking her out of the garage, correct?
Correct, I checked the immediate area around her.
But again, nothing more than a cursory look. You didn't search anything, right?
Correct.
I move exhibits 22 and 23 in the evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
Second to receive the exhibits.
As well as exhibit 24.
Any objection?
No objection.
Second to receive exhibit 24.
Now, after you had gotten Rebecca away from the garage, you eventually got her into an ambulance, correct?
Correct.
And you rode with her in the ambulance?
Yes, I did.
And you stayed with her at Mercy Medical Center?
Correct.
And in your report number, your first report, which would be exhibit 22, you note that you turned your body-worn camera off when you got to the hospital because of the large number of medical equipment and personnel, correct?
Correct, with other patients and patient privacy.
In your report, you noted it was because of the large number of medical personnel, correct?
Correct.
And isn't that the policy of your department to have the body camera running if there's going to be any meaningful contact with any member of the public?
At that point, when we arrived at the hospital, there was a large number of medical personnel that were in the room. I was directly outside the room, and I turned it off briefly before turning it back on when I went back into the trauma room.
And when you were in the trauma room, when you had it on briefly, you were joined by Detective Brett Robertson, correct?
Yes, at some point he did arrive at the hospital.
And I'm going to be showing you now what's been marked as defense exhibit number 33.
I'm going to just ask for an offer of proof as to what that is.
Body-worn camera.
From this officer?
Yes.
Thank you. And I guess before it started, again, is this camera depicting a conversation with the victims?
Oh.
Then I would ask to stop the video. To the extent that it contains hearsay, the state would have an objection.
Let's send the jury for a break.
All rise for the jury. Close your books, leave them on the chair again.
Please be seated. So on the record, outside the presence of the jury. You want to see the videotape up front?
I do.
Where are you starting from and where are you stopping at?
Start at the beginning, play it in its entirety.
I don't know what beginning is.
0 seconds.
Brett Robertson, I'm one of the detectives for Borkowski. Yeah. All right, so, Monticello. You know who would have had Toyota? You know who would have had that Toyota car? The 4Runner? Sorry. Move you over here, big old shit, okay? Hold your head just like before. Yeah, sorry. Be a little narrow with that over here. Over up a bit. That's gonna get stuck here. All right, Tom, you want to there, thank you. One, two. One all the way up the trail. Get the as soon as we have confirmation that it's okay, next. Oh, go this way. Okay? Get your little more cleaned up. So about that, do you know what vehicle that was? It was his? You know what address or anything he did? So he lives with himself? House or apartment?
Pausing at 2 minutes, 42 seconds.
What's the relevance?
The relevance is why he turns the body camera off and the excited utterance that he heard in that room when the phone call was made by Julie Gruettner.
What does that have to do with this tape?
Does it have to do with this tape?
Because he shuts the body camera off, and then after this, it establishes the foundation for the excited utterance that he was present and what he had heard, because it proves that he was in the room when the call was made and the excited utterance that was made.
Your Honor, I would object. I am aware of what Mr. Seaman is referring to. It's a couple levels of hearsay, and what I think the defense can ask Julie Gruettner whether she said. The defense is seeking to get in a statement made to Detective Robertson by a nurse who allegedly heard something from Julie Gruettner, who heard something from her husband. So there's a lot of, her husband, the deceased. There's several layers of hearsay there, and that video isn't relevant. I don't think there's any way to get in that statement from the nurse because that individual is not subpoenaed on behalf of the defense.
Judge, we can play this out because it goes more than just to the level of hearsay. The relevance of it is that the officer knew, at least 2 officers, if not 3 officers, knew what the excited utterance was. And that utterance was that Jim and John were on their way to Oshkosh to kill Josh. It appears nowhere. Portions of that utterance that Julie made, because the first thing she had said was she shot? The officer does ask Rebecca about that, but constantly appears to consciously choose not to ask about any of the other statements that were made. So its relevance goes towards essentially what appears to be a concerted effort to make sure this statement never got out. And how it doesn't appear in any reports. They're asked only certain things, so it's an excited utterance. But the relevance also, if not offered for the truth of the matter asserted, goes towards the whole exculpatory evidence of it. And
So it goes to the truth of the matter asserted.
Well, it goes to the truth of the matter asserted under the excited utterance. But if the court decides that it's not an excited utterance, it goes to the truth of the matter asserted, it's also relevant to show the bias of the investigation, how this was buried in any report and in any mention.
Your Honor, if I could just respond to that. I do have audio of that I can play for the court of what Mr. Seaman is referring to. It's a statement by a nurse who is not subpoenaed today, who apparently had a conversation with Ms. Gruettner when she informed Ms. Gruettner that her daughter had been shot. So the nurse is on audio.
So you have the audio of a nurse saying that to Detective?
Saying that she believed that Julie said that. The nurse is not subpoenaed by the defense.
I don't. Who did the nurse say that to?
Detective Robertson.
Was this officer there?
Yes,
So this officer heard this also?
that's the state's position, though it doesn't show up in any
Well, why
reports.
don't we let him answer that question? Did you hear that?
I have no idea what is being talked about right now, about any phone calls or nursing saying
I
something.
asked him the question.
And that's, when your body camera shut off after the exhibit that we just saw, the offer of proof, you were walking into the nurse's station where Julie Gruettner was called, correct?
I don't know who Julie is or who called who in that nurse's station. We're no longer having a conversation with Rebecca, and due to the medical stuff that was taking place, I didn't turn it off at that time.
At the start, in the early part of that video, there was a time check done with Detective Robertson on his handheld digital audio recorder, was there not?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Detective Robertson.
Well, it was just on the video that we saw. I could replay it, but he time checks it at 9:27 p.m., correct?
Like I said, I don't know. You'd have to ask Detective Robertson that.
After you came out of that room where we saw you entering with the nurses, you stayed in the emergency room with Detective Robertson where Rebecca was, correct? Or in that room where she was being put on the scanner. You came back out to that room with the nurse, correct?
I mean, I went into the nurse's station. Once they were done with the procedure, I then went back into the room where she was then brought back to the trauma room, and would later be brought up to the ICU.
Within 3 minutes of you entering that room, you were back in Brett Robertson's presence when the nurse came out and said what Julie Gruettner had, her excited utterance when told that Rebecca was in the hospital, correct?
I don't know.
In fact, you're the one that can be heard on that audio saying to Detective Robertson, wait till you hear this one. You recall that?
I did not hear that.
We can go to the next exhibit.
Well, you're trying to play this thing that says this tape for 2 or 3 minutes that says nothing. And I don't see the relevance of that. Unless you can convince me how that's relevant, I'm not gonna waste any more time.
Within 3 minutes of his entering the room,
That's argument, though.
it's established in the timeline of Brett Robertson's digital audio recording. So on this,
So what, I'm not gonna play 3 minutes of nothing. Why don't you just ask the question, during 3 minutes, did anything happen? No. I don't understand the relevance of all of it. And to answer your question, the nurse saying, this is what I heard, is not an excited utterance.
the nurse hearing an excited utterance is not an excited utterance?
What the nurse is saying is not an excited utterance. What she's relaying.
What the video established is that the officer heard it from Julie as well, because he later asked Rebecca a question.
What officer?
Officer Rukamp. He later
Just testified he didn't.
I can then ask him to play the portion where he asked Rebecca a question regarding what he had heard.
Once again, this goes to I'm talking about the 2.5 minutes you just played, from the beginning to the end. It has zero relevance. And you have not convinced me that it has any relevance. So it's not going to be played, and I'm not going to accept it as an exhibit. Is there another portion which you want to play for this officer?
Of this exhibit, no.
Not of this exhibit, of any exhibit.
Yes. I do have other exhibits to play for him.
And do you know what those are?
I don't know, but I just would reiterate that any reference to what this nurse thought that she heard Ms. Gruettner say is not to be admitted in the case. That would be the state's position, would be asking for a ruling on it.
I can play the next exhibit, if, to spare us from going through this again, where.
You mean you're gonna actually get to the point? Let's do that.
All right. This would be Exhibit 12, beginning at 9 minutes.
And what is Exhibit 12?
Body-worn camera of Officer Cody Rukamp. Beginning at, for the record, 8 minutes, 58 seconds.
So one of the things your mom did bring up in the phone conversation is she brought up right away, like, oh, did she get shot? Like, was there talk or was there like a possibility of something happening? Like, what comments? So he's just.
I can't really stress that enough. My mom said that.
Yeah, that was the first thing out of her mouth, or one of the first things was whether or not you had been shot. Has he ever expressed, I guess, this?
Pausing at 9 minutes, 40 seconds. So, Your Honor, this is in direct contrast to what the officer just testified about, saying that he had heard none of this phone conversation from Julie Gruettner.
No, that's not what he said. He said he never heard a conversation with a nurse saying she heard this, heard something. What this is saying, when we talked to your mom and told her what happened, your mom said, was she shot?
And then what follows, it's all an excited utterance after being informed that her daughter is in the hospital.
It's not an excited utterance. If you want to get in what someone had told the officer, call up that someone to testify. And then if that person doesn't say that, you can then recall this witness to testify about what happened, but you're not getting it in this way. It's hearsay. So any other snippets you want to play for this officer?
Well, based on the court's ruling, then I will not be able to play the audio from the nurse, correct?
Correct.
Then, no, and I would have no further questions for the officer.
Are you gonna have any redirect?
No.
All right, we'll release you. And why don't you take a 5-minute break and we'll bring the jury back up and we'll start with your next witness, who will be.
Next witness will be Mr. Barlow by video, but just to clarify, I just want to make clear that during Mr. Detective Robertson's video, or excuse me, his testimony, that there won't be any questions asked of him related to what a nurse has said to him. I obviously have no objection to the defense asking Julie what she said.
Correct.
Thank you.
See you back here in 5 minutes.
And Mr. Vargo is still on the line.
He is.
Oh, waiting patiently.
He's probably sitting there like,
Well, for
Yeah,
him,
he's been texting Jess too, like, I'm in the room, and I was like, I'm like, we all know, just text her.
Oh, the poor
Yeah.
guy. He's like, I just want to go